take a break from typing and tune in to the Part-Time Writers Podcast, the show where two part-time writers with full-time jobs look to profit from their passions, pay their bills, and please their wives. Join hosts CM Raymond and Ellie Barbant as they chronicle their meteoric rise to literary mediocrity. It's the Part-Time Writers Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Part-Time Writers Podcast. I am Chris, or CM Raymond, as my name goes.
That's right.
As it says on the books.
Hi, Chris. The name your mother gave you. Speaking is Lee Barbant, Lee Edward Barbant.
L.E.
L.E. Barbant. Hey, welcome to the second episode of our podcast. Just a reminder that this is not an amazing source for new writers.
Nope.
We have yet to make any money writing. We are, as I at least am, as green as you could get in terms of being a writer. So probably you should just be writing now instead of listening to this.
Yeah, this is kind of a waste of time. If you haven't gotten 2,000 to 3,000 words in,
Yeah.
shut this off, start writing, start dictating, whatever it takes. Do it, but don't listen. But if you've done your words already, or if you're burnt out, or if you're in the car, we're glad to have you.
Mm-hmm.
We're a little on the lo-fi side tonight because we have my old blue snowball.
Mm-hmm.
So the sound quality won't be as good. We're in my house, which is very echoey. It's like
It's an old, beautiful old house. I like it.
it is beautiful. And it's going to be echoey, maybe a little tinny.
There's an animal running around somewhere. You'll probably hear.
Yep, Echo the dog is running around.
Echo needs a pen name.
Echo needs a pen name. Echo is named after the character in the dollhouse, if you're into this sort of thing. So, yeah. Hey, here's the thing. We make some jokes about the podcast, but really what we're trying to do is we're trying to chronicle the experiment of two guys who have jobs, have families, have all kinds of responsibilities, but still want to try their hand at becoming fiction authors.
That's right.
And our standard, it was interesting because I was on Kboards today and someone posted an article about this kind of metric of success being 1 million books sold in 5 years or something like that.
Whoa.
And a lively discussion started with, hey, why is that the metric for success?
Right.
There's all kinds of matrices for success. I think that what we're doing is we're chronicling our attempt to have the option to go full time, if we wish, within 12 months of the first saved document.
That's right.
Which was January 23rd.
Yeah, just a few short days ago.
Nice.
So part of this is, as Chris said, a chronicle. Part of this is hopefully a little bit of a collaboration. Mm-hmm. We're hoping that those who are listening to us are, like us, part-time writers or people who are trying to change their profession in that way. So, as we kind of talk about the tools that we're using, maybe you can email us, contact us, shed some light, saying, hey, I tried that. It really sucked. Or, hey, let us know.
Don't do it.
Let me know, hey, what are the problems we're going to have in 2 months that I'm not prepared for now?
Yeah, you might tell us, stop trying to apply for BookBub. You'll never get one. Yeah, not a chance. Hey, it's good that Lee gave me a little laugh there because the other part of our background is this. I mentioned this last episode, but it's worth saying again to get us started. About pretty much exactly this time last year, I published my first nonfiction book, not under the name of CM Raymond. I used a pen name for that one.
Whoa. Not
my given name, CM. And at that point, my co-author and I, we had briefly talked about publishing or submitting it to the Big Five or an imprint or even an indie press. And we decided to self-publish. And it's at that point that I started listening to every podcast on self-publishing, reading all sorts of things. So I feel like I have been, I spend way too much time reading and sometimes commenting on Kboards. But you have investigated things very little. And so for you, you're really kind of, you're jumping off the cliff.
Yeah, I could not be more green. Not a single word I've ever written has been published. Even there's a couple blogs that I'm a part of, but they're all private. They're all just basically a place for me and my friends to kick around ideas. I do have a respectable, 6 Twitter followers. So my one tweet some traction there.
It could go viral.
That's right.
You never know.
But no, I've never received a cent for any of my writing. But I love to read, and I like the idea of being a writer. I've always been fascinated by it, but it's always been in the peripheral. So part of this podcast too is like an accountability thing. We're going to express our goals and then try to hold ourselves to them. But part of it too is just it's a chance for me and Chris to kind of kick around our process and the ideas that we have, so we can kind of reflect on it if we need to look back on it too.
Well, and the way we decided to do this is we have another podcast that's connected to our field, which we're both educators. So there's one clue if you want to be detectives or something.
I would
don't bother.
I would love to get to the point where people care enough about us to try to
out us
who we are.
All right.
One of the reasons I'm using a pen name, not only because it's fun and it seems classy, but it's also because I'm kind of embarrassed by this whole enterprise.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want my parents to know what I do with
maybe
all my
in
spare
5
time.
years you'll be trying to convince people. No, I'm
No,
L.E.
really?
Really, I am him. So we do podcasting anyway. We really enjoy it, and Tuesday nights are our story time, our story meetings. So we decided, why not just record the first half hour of our story meetings and make it into a podcast, see if people are interested.
Yeah.
And really, quite frankly, if nobody's interested, if people don't, comment to us or interact or ultimately, even if none of that happens and there's very few downloads, we might just, cut bait and I don't know how that finishes. Cut bait and run, cut bait and swim.
To be an author, you need to really have strong command of.
But those are like cliches, so it's okay not to have
idioms.
Those. Okay,
this is going to be like Nirvana's. Like you find those like tapes that they recorded in like their garage. This is what that's going to be.
This is our garage band.
So pure fans of the future will love this. Love us for doing this, I think.
Okay, so tonight we thought it would be good to talk about our collaboration because most authors don't collaborate. There's quite a few who do. And the reason that I asked Lee if he'd be interested in collaborating is, well, I think 1, we're friends. 2, we're interested in similar things. 3, for me, it's been a big motivating factor has been watching the self-publishing podcast guys collaborate and how much energy they have around that. And also Joanna Penn of The Creative Pen. She recently collaborated with Jay Thorne, a thriller author or a horror author, and she's a thriller author. And they did a collaborative project just lately. And I think this could really drive my writing forward and hopefully somebody else's as well. So we didn't even talk about it that long before we took the leap. Yeah. I think actually this is how it started, is I've been planning to collaborate with another friend, which I'm going to still. And we were talking about doing a robot stories. Yeah. So kind of Asimov for the 21st century. And I told you about that a few times. You read a little bit of Arcanum Island. And then ultimately you said, hey, if your friend doesn't work with you on the robot stories, we should do something. So it was you.
Well,
Is that right?
I think that's right. And you'll probably hear me say this a lot. I'm insecure about this whole experience, right? I don't have a natural confidence in my craft. So again, speaking as someone with no experience, collaboration is the way to go. It is the way to go. It's helpful to have a partner to keep you motivated, to pick up the slack on areas where you struggle. Like, I don't know. My part of this process too, I want to become a better writer. But it's really helpful at the get-go to be like, hey, I don't know how to write this scene. And like, okay, you can write it. Like, perfect, done. You can write so much faster if you're only doing part of the work.
Okay, Lee, why don't you lay down our collaborative process, who does what, and then maybe we'll talk about what we like about that a little bit more.
So we spent a fair amount of time brainstorming, kicking around, what's the idea that we have, what do we want it to look like, who are our characters, and we had a list. We brainstormed together a list of probably 15 characters that we've narrowed down to 4 or 5 central ones at the moment. And that took us a couple weeks. It's only been 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks that we've been pen to paper, so to speak.
Probably about 3 weeks, if that, coming up on 3, not 3 full weeks yet.
So what we've done in that time is we've taken this huge brainstorm, this idea, and together we kind of etched out a loose story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's the general arc? I've been more responsible in that time then with breaking it down into a more nuanced, okay, what's each character's plot going to be? How does the story flow? At every step of the way, we've been doing this together. I've been beating out several chapters then. I send the beats over to Chris. Chris then writes it. And I've been encouraging him to write as fast as possible.
Which was really hard in the beginning. Because
get it out.
That's the way, when I write on my own, I do super fast drafts. Mm-hmm. And I will, for one book in the Arcanum Island series, which I'll say this just because I'm self-conscious about it, Arcanum Island series, and I think I may have said it in the last episode, or the first episode, it was kind of my warm-up. I think of it that way. Mm-hmm. But I think in the first book, I fast drafted the entire thing and then edited the entire thing in one run. In the second book, I did like stages. Mm-hmm. So I think I did thirds, like a first, second, and third story structure. And for each third, I fast drafted, and then I did 2 other run-throughs. One was like a rewrite run-through, and then the other was a polish. And once I did that with the 3 sections, I sent it to an editor.
Okay. So yeah, so we story arc it together. I kind of focus a little bit more on the nuances of it. I try to beat out some of the chapters. Chris fast writes, and then I second write. It's not quite editing, but I go through and I try to expand it. The areas where I feel more comfortable writing, some of the narration, some of the cultural descriptions, I expand those.
You like the research portions, so I can say
the research
so aspects. I'll throw brackets in and I'll say, hey, we need this here. Mm-hmm. And you'll do some of the research and then actually write it. Mm-hmm. Instead of like give me research and then I write that portion.
Yeah, that's been easier. And then I spend most of my time beating, and then second writing and researching. You've been spending most of your time just writing, just putting words out there.
Now, I do read them before I send them off to you.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly because, well, one...
Do you read all of them before you send them off to me?
Is that a surprise? There may have been 1 or 2 where I didn't, but that was because I was drinking a lot that night. Well, I'm also playing with dictation, which maybe we'll make that another episode. So those I definitely have to spend a good amount of time on. But I consider that writing time. Mm-hmm. So right now, I've been working with typing sprints. So I'm typing, I'm doing 10-minute, 15-minute, and 30-minute sprints. And so in 10 minutes, I'm writing almost 250 words in 10 minutes, which is relatively fast, but not super fast because it breaks down to 25 words a minute.
Well, it's way faster than me. I mean, I would spend... in the couple chapters that I've written and some of the writing that I tried to do before we collaborated, I mean, I'd sit down for an entire evening, hours, and get through like half of a chapter.
Because you were trying to be meticulous with every line.
Yeah.
But get this, dictation, 10 minutes, I'm getting upwards of 800 words.
Man.
But then it will take me another 15 minutes probably, maybe 10 minutes to get those words into the shape that I would have written them.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference. But ultimately, 20 minutes, I have 800 words, or typing 10 minutes, I have 250 words. Mm-hmm. And I still go over it once before I send it to you. So the dictation thing has been cool. I think I'm learning to be a storyteller orally in ways that I didn't think would. I think my brain is starting to adapt from typing story to telling story. And speaking, what's that stuff? Period.
Oh, punctuation. This is why the partnership is important.
Sometimes I think in punctuation.
Well, so pros and cons of what we're doing. One,
there are some certain cons.
There are cons.
And I've come up with my biggest one, but I'll say it after yours.
Well, I've got one too, so that's perfect. But so my pros, I'll start with the pros. One, it's, like I said, it's super encouraging, right? So I tried to write a book. Last year I tried to write, but it was purely as a hobby. I didn't plan to make any money off of it. I didn't get even close to finishing it. But I would like get stuck on a part. Like, hey, I don't really know how to make this conversation work. And then I would sit there for 2 weeks thinking about that conversation. there is something in terms of craft about telling a story quickly. I do think that tends to make for better storytelling, to kind of go through it, get it out there, express it. Most of the resources that I've been looking at tend to be a little bit disparaging towards prose. They certainly, maybe not disparaging, they highlight the story and they say,
Oh, particularly indie. I mean, you're referencing, in particular, in January, Hugh Howey had a post.
Yeah.
And that's not unusual, but one of his big points in that post, it was called So You Want to Be a Writer.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, fabulous. But one of his points is the most important thing is tell a good story.
Yep.
And prose is secondary.
Which we mentioned this in our last one, that, at least in my college days, I was more of a pretentious reader.
Me too.
And so I want to tell a story, and I want to write a book that will sell. That's the prime goal. But I don't want to sacrifice quality just to do that. So the team aspect is amazing because I can take as much time as I have to work on the prose, but it's not going to slow down the process.
Right.
It doesn't slow down the project. We're telling the story, and we've set some goals, and we'll explain this a little bit later. We've set some pretty hefty goals for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can then spend as much time as I have into shaping that as best as I can. And at the end of the day, saying, okay, it's good enough. Let's go from there.
It's funny because we both work off of each other, because I know that you will work on the prose as long as you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways, I want to move at a pace that allows you to work on the prose. But I know that as you see chapters piling up in our zero drafts, as we're calling it, folder, you start to get motivated to move a little bit more quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that will, and we're still going to do, at least I'll do one last polish. We were talking about this before we started recording. At least, so I'm doing what we're calling zero drafts. You're doing the first draft rewrite, we could almost call it. And then we have a polish folder. So once the first drafts are gone over again, they'll go into the polish folder. And then I'm assuming that means they're ready for a paid edit. I think
so. I mean, again,
you might want to do a last polish too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could. The first book I tried to write, I rewrote the same chapter probably 10 times. Every day I would come back, I would rewrite the chapter. I wrote it 10 times, and I still wasn't satisfied with it. So I could spend forever on this thing, on our superhero urban fantasy story.
Well, here's the deal. Okay, I'll just say this to the listeners because I'm not ashamed, because you can't find me. We actually have a throwaway episode where on Friday we recorded we recorded an episode, but it was Casual Friday for our other podcast, which meant that we were drinking while we were recording. And somehow
the biggest con of our partnership is your drinking habit, I think. Or the biggest pro. It's hard to say.
I think that's why I write. So apparently I had too much to drink, and I won't say I didn't remember recording the podcast, but I didn't really remember recording the podcast.
You texted me later that day and said, hey, when are we going to do our second episode? I said, you mean our third episode? You literally just came from my house. You're like, okay, I'm ready later if you want to do the second episode.
So we're drinkers with a writing problem.
Yeah.
That's really what's going on. But my point of sharing that was, I'm not sure what was in that episode and what was in the first episode, so bear with me if I repeat myself. So going back to the literary genre, and I don't know, I'll just say it again. Sean Platt and Johnny B. Truant of the Self-Publishing Podcast, one of the things they've started doing is every year they do one book that Johnny calls literary as fuck. And so their point is they see themselves as artists, but
I think he took that from Tolstoy. Isn't that what Tolstoy
is it really?
To describe? No.
I could say that in Croatian now, though, after the most recent chapter I just wrote with the Croatian spirit swearing. So anyway, that seems really attractive to me, is even if it's not one every year, since we both have this deep love for like both highbrow fiction, but also sort of like the fusion, the Franzen, even Vonnegut sort of pop highbrow. I could see us having another project that is like this slow burn literary project.
Yeah, in the back of my mind, I've got the one project that I started that's my life project. I have a 15-year goal for it.
It's called War and Peace.
That's right.
And Zombies.
And zombies. That would be something. The second project is like my, I like it. Every once in a while I'll go back to it if I've got a free moment. Hopefully I would finish that in 5 years or so. This one we're hoping to finish it and its 2 sequels within the year. So I like that there's a difference in approach to each one of those things. This one's collaborative. This one's fast. Its goal is to get to market. But we can still try to do it as well as we can with that goal in mind.
And get to market well.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my commitments has been I'm trying to read successful mid-list indie authors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that half of them, I not only like the story, but their writing is very good. Decent to very good.
Mm-hmm. But not perfect.
Not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them, the other half, they have a good story. And
mm-hmm.
sometimes a very good story, not very well written.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, being somebody who is into various literary genres, I have a hard time finishing those.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can see there's a market for something. That's what Hugh Howey is ultimately saying.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a writer, the most important thing is tell a good story, because people can be forgiving. The masses can be forgiving of average writing,
mm-hmm.
but they're not forgiving of a bad story.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think that you and I have the chops because we've done academic writing. We've read so much. I think we have the chops to do. I think we have a great story. I think our first attempt will be above average for the mid-list indie world,
yeah.
but not top of the crop. We won't be top of the crop.
Yeah, I think we have a leg up on our writing, and the fact that we're doing it collaboratively means we'll have a leg up in our story, right? That it's so easy for one of us
and
to
our
get
writing.
Yeah, it's so easy for one of us to get lost in the story, and the other person say, "Hey, look, there's a simpler way to do that. There's a better move." Which I think all the time when I read, like, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, and I'm reading George's story, and I think, man,
he needs you.
I think there are just some moves he could have made that would have really cleaned things up. And so I love the partnership aspect. Okay, so we said our pros.
Okay. Here's my con.
Oh, yeah.
I'll start.
Go.
I think my biggest con is this. And I noticed it because there's a couple chapters that I actually... So we did large story arc. We did some outlining together, but then you took the reins.
Mm-hmm.
You did the outlining, which is great. And then you started beating out chapters, but I got ahead of your beating.
Uh-huh.
And so I beat maybe 2
mm-hmm.
out, which when I was working on my own, that's how I rolled. And what I noticed is, and this is obvious, I think, or it should be obvious, is that the chapters that I beat out, the writing was so much easier.
Mm.
Because I had created the beats for that chapter.
Yep.
I had it all in my head. So there's still like this. So what I've been doing is whatever I'm going to be writing the next day or later the same day, I actually go over your beats and I've been printing them out and carrying them with me. And I like read your beats throughout the day so that when I go to sit down at night, I start to just write those beats the way that I've been imagining them all day. And that's really helpful. I can't sit down with your beats and just start typing.
Yeah. And
so I guess that's a con, but maybe the way it forces me to think about them more. So I can't get ahead of, so if I'm planning on writing 2,000 to 3,000 words in a day, I can't get ahead of my time of reflection on the beats, or I have to stop and do that again.
Mm-hmm. Which is also interesting. I think and the fact that we have 2 people looking at this is helpful. I think that our danger will be with continuity stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You describe a character one way in one chapter, and then in another chapter, describe them differently if two different people mapped out that chapter, right?
We haven't been taking very good notes on our character. Like, we started with some good character notes.
Yeah.
I think that one thing, depending on how your pace is going on the first read, it might be worth making like a notes folder. I'd do it in Scrivener, but you're too cheap. Oh, and you have a Surface, so you can't
yeah, I can't
download
do it.
Surface.
There's no screen wrap.
So maybe it's like Google Doc or a shared Dropbox file.
So that's one pitfall that we might have to. But I think we've been okay so far. But
So far we've been okay, but as we get further on, we're going to start forgetting things.
Yeah, that's true. Well, good thing that I don't forget anything. I'm a good partner that way.
I'm the worst. I didn't remember that we did a podcast.
I had to explain to you like 3 times what I was thinking about our one character's transformation.
No.
You kept going.
You changed it a couple times.
I did change it a couple times. Yeah. That's fair. That's true.
I couldn't remember which change we chose. So I wanted to defend myself on that one.
Yeah. Hey, one con that I've been kind of kicking through is that, so I'm viewing this because I'm not convinced we're going to make any money off of it. I want to make money off of it. I'm not convinced we will. So I have like a secondary goal in mind, and that goal is like personal development. So as I've been doing this, I've been spending time reading writing guides, rhetoric guides, grammar guides. I want to understand, because I'm going to spend the rest of my life as a reader anyways. This process has been interesting. Now I can analyze the books that I love from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. So I want to do that as well as I can.
You'll never read this the same way again.
Which is, I think, a good thing. But so as I'm like developing my understanding of prose and style, because you have written the chapter and I'm like going over it again, part of me is wondering if I will be delayed in my development of my own voice. Like that's something a lot of the people talk about, is that, you know, it just takes practice to kind of figure out your voice. And it's just something I was wondering about. How do and maybe that's okay. Maybe I take this time to like develop my skills and then I can do my voice later, kind of thing.
So hold on a second. You're telling me that this is your throwaway project?
It's not.
Because I already had my throwaway project.
I haven't had mine yet. No, I want this project to be, in my mind, I've had to compartmentalize a bit. So I wanted the project to be good enough that I could invest myself in it wholeheartedly. And I've done that. But I also, there's a reason we chose to do a superhero story set in Pittsburgh about adjunct professors.
Because it's awesome.
To give a little insight into what our book's going to be about. I wanted it to be, in case it sucks, I can say at the end, wow, yeah, it was just our superhero story we were writing for fun. I'm writing it for excellence and for a vocation, maybe, and also just for fun, just for personal development.
Okay.
I've compartmentalized. I don't think it's compromised.
Yeah, so this is my work. That's just self-protection.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I have thought about changing the pen name for this project and actually starting over. But I don't think I will, because I think Arcanum Island is really good for middle grade and teen readers.
Which is what it was written for.
Which is what it was written for. And, well, that's the big debate as well, is should you always use a different pen name for different genres? Now, here's the thing. There is some, so adult readers that like teen fiction, I think would really like what we're doing now if they liked Arcanum Island.
Yeah.
And we'll label the Pittsburgh heroes, or whatever we call it, well enough that little kids won't read it. Because there's some vulgarity in it, and the first line says something about blowjobs, but we already thought about changing that.
Yeah, we wanted to have the freedom to write it however it felt natural at the time.
That's right. So I think I'm going with the same name, but that could be another story for another time.
Hey parents, did your kids like Arcanum Island? Well, this one's for you. You did want to write it as an erotica piece at one point.
Well, erotica sells. Adjunct erotica.
But we live in a wonderful age for this, right? There's a market for people who are saying, hey, this is an idea, I'm going to change it a little bit. And people are like, okay, I will invest, 20 hours into reading that thing.
Yeah, or I'll invest $2.99 and read half of it.
That's right.
Okay, so collaboration.
What do we do?
Is that all we got on collaboration for tonight? We're getting close to 30 minutes. Got to do our story.
That's right.
Story time.
We're ending this. Okay, so what are our goals?
Our goals
for next week. What do we want to have finished?
Okay, let me say this. You said we're going to try to have 3 books and maybe a novella, a short,
Every time we have this conversation,
Done by the end of the year.
You keep making it bigger and bigger.
Yeah, my goal is this.
Man.
I think that if we can sustain this pace, which I don't know if you think it's unreasonable yet. If we can sustain this pace, here are my goals, is that by the end of March, we're ready. It's right now February, 9th?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of March, we'll be ready to release, as long as editing goes smoothly. External factors.
Mm-hmm. You get our book cover and all that stuff.
Editor, book cover, that we can release book 1 at the end of March, book 2 at the end of April, book 3 before the true summer slump starts. You did that last time I said it.
Yeah.
But I think it's reasonable because here's my goal for the week. That's a setup for the goal for the week.
Okay.
We are closing in on the end of part 1.
Yep.
Which is the longest part. They're not equal parts.
Right.
Part 1, 2, and 3. I got pretty close to finishing part 1 today. My goal is to finish writing, if you have the beats ready.
Mm-hmm.
Finish writing first drafts in a week and a half. So
Wow.
So I'm going to say this time next week, if you have beats for me, I'm going to have part 2 almost finished. Man. Two chapters shy of part 2 finished.
Okay, so once we're done with this podcast, then we're going to turn to our story meeting.
Which we might stand corrected.
That's right. So if the story meeting goes productively, I can definitely have finished the beats for the rest of the book by next week. And some of them are already done, so I think I can be ahead of you on that front. My goal, before you said your goal, was to have the whole of part 1 second written, my polish. I think I can do both.
What pace are you doing the first rewrite at?
How
long does it take you to rewrite a chapter? Now, they're all different, but one that's, our average is 1,800 to 2,200 words.
And this is why the pace thing is helpful for me. So it's been roughly 1 a day. It doesn't need to be 1 a day. I could easily do 2, if not 3 a day. But like the other day, I spent like half an hour on like 1 paragraph. I just didn't like it. It had some it just didn't fit. But I couldn't get rid of it, and so I spent probably half an hour working through that 1 paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really necessary for what we're doing. So I can definitely pick up the pace to do it, and maybe the goal will be good to do that.
But I think that you could still work at that pace from what we just said, because beats are getting close. And again, I don't mind beating if your priority turns into, hey, I need to, because your outline is good.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about the rest of the story.
Actually, what you do for an outline is what some people do for beats.
Okay.
And so your outline is pretty extensive. At a certain point, if I catch up with your beats, I think I can beat from your outlines and just add 4 more points and then run from there.
And then I can come through and I can pick up we need this. You didn't mention this thing. We need it for later. The continuity stuff. I can do that. No problem. No, I beat quickly, but it's intermittent. Right. With the editing thing.
That sounds like a personal problem.
I can focus on the second writing for hours. With the storytelling, it comes and goes. Uh-huh. Sometimes I'm in it, and I'll stay up to. You've seen the timestamps on the notes. I'll stay up to 4 a.m, and boom, I got part 3 generally outlined.
Because that's what you really love. You love the world building. You love the story shaping.
I love the world building, and I love the prose
wordsmithing.
It's the getting the rest of it out that's problematic. I'm just terrible at writing action scenes and dialogue. I know what needs to happen. I just don't know how to say it. I was in a band in college, but before I was in the band, I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, but I couldn't sing and I couldn't write songs.
Yeah, problem.
But I had a friend who was like a singer-songwriter, and I made his songs better, and I made his writing better, and I made the song better. I don't know. I really like latching onto someone who has more of a gift for speaking clearly and quickly. I think I make things better, but I don't think I could do it on my own necessarily. At least not where I'm at now.
But you will.
The hopefully that would be the goal.
Yeah, if you want to.
Oh, I love the collaborative thing. I'm not willing to get rid of that.
I mean, one thing I texted you was, I never want to write alone again.
Shoot.
Now, I'm not sure if
better.
I'll stick to those. Actually, I have that other college series happening, and I really like it. It's on total hold right now, even though the first book is almost done. I think it's commercial. It's definitely niche. It's like new adult, but in a weird... I'll just keep it to myself, because that'll definitely be a pen name, not erotica. It's kind of like, they talk about like sweet romance.
Yeah.
I guess it could be categorized as sweet college with an edge, but I'll leave it at that because I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
I guess I am talking about it more. It's for people that want new adult that isn't just about sex, because new adult genre has basically been, hey, what kind of story can we create between sex scenes? And I think some people want new adult that's a little bit more thoughtful than that, and that it's not driven by sex. And so that's what I'm working on.
Like kind of like John Green. He would be like someone I would point to, like
Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah, that guy.
I haven't read any of his stuff.
Like Paper Towns, it's more thoughtful than most teen fiction I've read, and it feels realistic, but the whole thing's not about, because they're in high school, so the relationships are important to them. But at the same time, it's like, this is not your lifelong partner, probably. Right. You probably shouldn't like kill yourself because they're not talking to you for a week.
Right. Yeah, I think that might be true. But anyway, the point was, I have a project, and I still need to finish the third season, because I'm doing it as a serial, of Arcanum to wrap that up. So I at least have 2 projects in the hopper.
Well, I'll put this as another goal then for us. If we get to the point where we're successful enough that we need to split up because of creative differences, worth it.
So be it. Yeah. So be it. But we hope our readers come with us.
That's right.
But again, I think that the collaboration thing, if anybody's considering it and hasn't done it yet, check it out, because it's a blast. It is a blast. It's so far, and we haven't fought yet. I don't think. Or I'd been drinking too much.
You don't remember the fight, so it's perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so my goal is I want to average. So I won't hit it daily, but I'm looking at, and I like to set big goals. I want to average 2,000 words a day between now and next Thursday. I have a conference, not this weekend, but next weekend. So I want to average 2,000 words a day between now and next Thursday. And then at the conference, I want to buy some time in between stuff to do some dictation and some writing as well. But I won't hit 2,000. And because of my, I have a pretty busy day job. So that means that some days I'll hit 3,000. Some days I'll hit 1,000. Some days I hit 600 and I'm happy for that. So that means that the next time we do the podcast, I should have 14K or 12K. I never know how to subtract a day. I guess it would be 12K written by the next time we do the podcast. So we'll check in with you when we're back.
Perfect. Hey, thanks for joining us. Good luck with your own writing endeavors. And maybe you can read our book one day. Or
very soon.
Or I'll murder Chris and then write a thriller about it.
Perfect. Hey, check us out. You can drop us a line if you're listening, just to say, hey, we exist.
Yeah, encourage us.
On Twitter, I am @_CMRaymond_.
I'm @LE Barbant. That's like barber, but with an NT at the end instead of an R. Barbant.
Really?
BARBANT. No, I guess not. Barber has an E in it.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes. I'm still learning my name.
All right. Hey, have a great week. Get your words in, and still work hard at your day job.
The end.
The end.